Users of Reddit. Women who gave the guy who's been single his whole life a chance. How did it turn out? In private, he was a sweetheart. Then we met his group of friends, all single men in their 30s, and he tried to belittle me and position himself above me in front of them, kinda to show that he was some sort of alpha male since he now had a girl. At first I thought it was insecurities or something. Let's say I excused him. I tried to talk to him about it. It didn't change a thing. So I put him back in his fucking place and walked out, and I made sure to do it in front of his friends since apparently they were included in our dynamic. I hope for future partners' sakes that he learned something from that. What did he do or say when you left? Did his friends react? Of course he called me hysterical when I was speaking in a very calm and poised manner. I just brushed it off. He was trying to get a reaction out of me, and there's no way I would let him have that satisfaction. His friends were mostly stunned, and I didn't stay long enough to see their entire reaction. I was out. You are learning why he's single until then. Maybe, but this sounds kinda negative. I would be more concerned if someone had had dozens of failed relationships. If they simply never had any, it could have been, for example, because they are very shy, but may still be super nice people once you've cracked their shell. Not well. All of his friends were so intrigued by me. I understood it as, who is this girl who finally made him settle? I felt like I was really special. They would constantly tell me how lovely I was and that they were so happily surprised by our pairing. Again, I thought these were all compliments. Turns out the curiosity with me was actually, wow, I can't believe this racist misogynist with an ugly temper and a drinking problem actually found a girlfriend. There must be something wrong with her. When his best friend tells you you're too good for them, run. Yes. I went on a date with this girl when I was a teenager. We met online in the wee early days of the internet. When I met her friends, the first thing they asked me was, so what did she tell you about herself? They basically knew she was a pathological liar and wanted to find out what she told me to convince me to ask her out. Turns out, she lied about damn near every aspect of her life and personality. They gently suggested I should run, and I took their advice. Well done on getting out. Some people stay stuck for years. It's sad looking back. None of his friendships were genuine. They all gossip behind each other's backs, but maintain the friendship in order to have someone to drink with on the weekends. To be fair, I was clearly not the most emotionally secure person, considering I was ignoring so many red flags. Luckily, when we broke up and his true self emerged, it shook me to such an extent, I went deep into therapy, gave up alcohol, and removed any toxic relationships from my life. In a way, I'm actually kind of grateful for the whole thing. Not me, but friends of mine. They met at a party I hosted. I was friends with both of them separately before they met. She was divorced or getting divorced amicably from her first ex. He had been single his whole life. They were both in their 40s at the time. They celebrated their 25th anniversary last month. He thought nobody could love him. When we were together, he said we are two people that nobody could love. I didn't want to share his misery. It ended very quickly. Dang, I'm insecure, but I could never put down my partner like that. I guess misery loves company, and he wanted her to be there with him. I began talking to an old high school acquaintance 35 years later, and it started getting kind of romantic, seeming like something with potential. And then he began saying, we're broken in the same way, and I totally relate to your exes and see them in myself. I told him that I don't see myself as broken, and I was uncomfortable with him relating to men from my past. He was glib about it. We had been planning that he would visit me in a few weeks, and he bought his ticket. Then my ex shoved our son during a disagreement about wearing a jacket. The school sent our son home for emotional distress and made a CPS report. And that week, I went to family court to ask for an emergency custodial change and a hearing on permanently changing custody. At the very same time, I was being recruited and interviewed, headhunted for a new position that would have been life-changing. I told this man that I just didn't have the emotional bandwidth to see him and would like to postpone his visit for a few months. He absolutely lost his shit. My needs and wants at a time of life when I felt like I was barely hanging on meant absolutely nothing to him. To him, I was unreasonable and a bitch for jerking him around. That ended that. That's such a heartbreaking mindset to hear from someone. When people carry that kind of deep self-loathing, it can unintentionally hurt the people who try to love them. No one deserves to feel like they're a burden just for caring. That's usually what happens when you treat people good when they've never been treated well their whole lives. Instead of being uplifted by you, they'll continue to see themselves as worthless and view you as worth less than them. If this person values me, it means they are below me in value. Not saying human beings' relationships are about high or low value. The word value is just easier to use for me to get my point across. The other self-destructive path goes like this. I'm worthless. If this person is treating me with kindness, it's because I've tricked them into thinking I'm worthwhile. Eventually they'll figure it out and ditch me. Pre-gaming, you're self-sabotage, so you don't have to take any responsibility or accountability. That guy's been at it for a long time. Damn, for real. My recent ex kept saying that she was a bad person and no one could love, not even her parents. I tried my best to reassure her, but it was never enough. Eventually I saw that she would rather just wallow in misery and have everyone keep validating her and taking care of her. She was a good friend, but not a good lover. My friend married a pilot in his 40s, never married, met at church. After marriage, he wouldn't have sex with her. She was thin and gorgeous by anyone's standards. She pressed for reasons, wanted to start marriage counseling. He finally said the reason he wouldn't have sex was because she wasn't close enough in her relationship to Jesus. Turns out he was a repressed homosexual. He never admitted it and was nasty hateful in the divorce. Oof. I knew a guy and a girl that got married very young, like both 18, super religious. Despite being on the fairly fanatical end of the spectrum, they both were extremely accomplished academically, relatively intelligent and driven people. Went to college, he graduated fast, and he got a very good job. She decided it was time to start a family. And it didn't go well. Turns out, for the first few years of their marriage, she was making excuses for him. They were young, so much stress from school and work at the same time, etc. But eventually the excuses couldn't really add up. They tried religious counseling, talking to his doctor, and then more doctors, couples therapy, medications. Shoot, they even went and saw a couple of sex therapists, which would have been way outside either of their comfort zones. She loved him so much that despite being raised and told homosexuality was the mortal sin and disgusting, she became an ally just in case he did turn out to be gay, because even if they wouldn't be together, she wanted him to be happy. Except, he didn't get turned on by guys either. He tried that. He tried a lot of things to try to be able to perform his husbandly duties, but just never really found the whole sex thing motivating, even on meds. No trauma that anyone could find, perfectly healthy, good testosterone levels, though he had a ton of people telling him he was broken. This was way before asexuality was really on the public radar, but eventually a sex therapist thought that might be what was going on, and yeah, turns out the guy was ace. While he was demi-romantic, he leaned pretty hard to the apothosexual, sex-negative side when it came to the actual physical act, and it wasn't anything anyone could find a fix for. They did, even at the time of their divorce, still love each other, I think, but she couldn't stay in a sexless marriage, and he couldn't have sex, and neither of them were open to alternative arrangements. Pretty sad all around. I'm the single guy. I've always been very insecure around women. I've had few and short-lived relationships throughout my life until I met her in my late 30s, a gorgeous woman who I don't know what she saw in me. She says that, like Jessica Rabbit, I make her laugh. We've been together for 8 years now and are married. She makes me feel like the happiest man on earth. It's kind of sad. My wife reminds me every so often of the things she sees in me that I don't see in myself. Apparently, I'm a good guy. God, bro, I feel this. I'm told by a lot of people that I'm a good man, and I try really hard to be. It's who I want to be. But I still feel a lot of the time that there's ugly parts of me that people don't see that make it hard for me to believe. It's something I'm working on. I know it's just the little gremlin in my brain from a fight with severe depression that's telling me these things. I'm getting better at telling it to shut up on some days. If you weren't a good man, you wouldn't care so much about those ugly parts. It's like how you shouldn't compare your life with what everyone else is posting in their highlights reel. You shouldn't compare your inner life with what everybody else is happy to make public. It's one thing to be told you're a good man, it's another to be told you're desirable or even actively desired. I helped him get in shape, get into therapy for anxiety, move out of his parents' house, and get a better job with upward mobility. All things he wanted to do, by the way. I didn't push anything on him. He just didn't know where to start, so I found resources and helped him. I encouraged him to feel good about himself, and I put his needs and growth first. I also more than paid my share of relationship expenses, as he was from a wealthy family and I didn't want them to think I was a gold digger. In exchange, after 3 years, he said he never found me attractive and was only with me because I helped him, and hoped I wouldn't mind if he went out and experienced other women because they find him hot now. When I immediately packed my shit and left, he started crying about me being his best friend, and how could I abandon him like this? Easily, as it turns out. Haven't talked to him since, and that was about 3 years ago. So yeah, didn't go well. Now I focus my energy exclusively on myself. No more helping people become the best version of themselves at my own expense. I hope he's living his best life, but by God, he better stay far out of mine. He was super clingy and constantly anxious about the relationship because he had never had anyone show any interest like that in him before. That's how I was in my relationships. I've been single for a while now because I wanted to avoid that, but now I've been working on myself more so that I won't be like that anymore. Yep, that's how it feels when you're in a scarcity mindset. I was totally cool, calm, and collected until the moment where she showed interest in me, and then all of a sudden, the stakes were sky high. I felt hyper aware that at any moment, I could do or say something wrong, and that interest would vanish, and then I'd be all alone again, probably for another few years, which became a self-fulfilling prophecy when I started acting all insecure and anxious, saying she was out of my league, and trying to rush her into commitment so I could finally relax. I can relate to this feeling completely. I've had several dates tell me, while rejecting me of course, that they have no doubt I'd find a partner, that they're shocked I'm perpetually single, etc., but I know I won't. They don't get it, but I know I'm going to continue to be alone and overlooked, so I feel this need to give a chance to anyone who looks my way, regardless of red flags, standards, or my own intuition, which obviously leads to some pretty crappy experiences. And no matter how much I seem to improve or heal on my own, I fear the next time I meet someone, the same desperation will kick in, and it reaffirms the belief that there's something wrong with me, I'm unlovable, etc. It's the worst kind of cycle. I like to say that when you're used to having an empty plate, you get excited for crumbs. I've been on 2 dates in the last 7 years, and during each one, I knew that if it didn't work out, it would be years before I'd get another chance. That's just an impossible amount of pressure for anyone to deal with. I don't care who you are. Imagine being unemployed and only getting 2 interviews in 7 years. How badly would you want to get the job? Did it twice. The first one was absolutely horrific. The second one was great, until we started actually planning our wedding 4 years into the relationship, and he felt he hadn't got to sow his wild oats. So also terrible. That sow wild oats thing is one of the things that terrifies me about dating this type. I've been single my whole life and never wanted for a whole phase or anything like that. If anything, I wish I could fast forward past the horrors of dating and be in a healthy, comfortable, stable relationship. Were there any oats to sow for him? It's funny you should ask. He definitely had a few challenges to overcome, and I'm not sure why he thought he would be so successful at sewing. There's a couple of reasons I was his first real relationship in his very late 20s. My patience definitely afforded him a different view of his capacity that he likely figured out too late. It was contingent upon the trust I had built with him. 10 years of psychological anguish. Turns out he hated me the whole time. It wasn't worth it. I recently had an experience like that. Thankfully didn't last so long, though. How did you figure out he'd actually hated you from the beginning? Only a person who hated me could have treated me the way that he did from the beginning. Unfortunately, I didn't know what love actually looked like until my niece and nephew showed me unconditional love. I also did a lot of therapy. It is so easy for them to love me exactly as I am. It became painfully obvious that what he said was love couldn't possibly be. I left more than a year ago, and I'm still shocked by the realizations I have about his lies. Same boat. He's divorcing me now while I'm in active treatment for breast cancer, but maintains his victim stance because he's apparently been miserable the entire time he's been with me. It's wild. Here I was thinking we were working on things and had no idea the pure hatred he had for me the whole time. Now I'm being left in possibly the worst way imaginable, and he refuses to talk to me about it at all. Broke the news over a text message. He's meeting me with this arrogant attitude around co-parenting, telling me he just wants to do what's best for the kids, but is hardly communicating with me at all, and throws a tantrum anytime I don't drop everything to help him out. Somehow he had an expectation that I would maintain a friendship with him, because not only is this his only relationship, but it's also his only breakup, and so he's failing that as well. The most narcissistic, controlling, insecure, obtuse man-child, masquerading as a nice guy this whole time. I'm eagerly looking forward to all of this being behind me. He's like a breath of fresh air. He trusted me from the start, that is not giving me grief about working late. and is incredibly thoughtful, that is, taking the initiative to cook and clean. Things were going so smoothly that I almost thought I was wearing rose-tinted glasses. We did a pre-marriage workbook that really gets to the nitty-gritty of whether we're compatible for marriage after 3 months of dating, defining the relationship. He's the type that if he was ever betrayed or treated maliciously, he would never trust the same way again, so I'm kind of thankful that he'll never have to experience that. Long story short, I married him. Not giving grief about working late. That's a thing? Just how toxic are people these days? Some people get really bothered when dinner plans are changed without a lot of warning. I could kinda get that if, for example, there was food in the crock pot that wouldn't keep well. A lot of people just don't trust their partners, which sounds like a friggin' stressful way to live, in my opinion. Well, we've been going out 6 months, and he's 30 and he was a lifelong virgin, never done anything with a girl, grew up shy, etc. But he met me after a glow-up arc from the gym, and he's very confident unlike his days of being a shy teenager. Also, whenever we have arguments, he always tries to understand my perspective and says he tries to apply the relationship advice he's been hearing his whole life from people he looks up to. Generally, he has such a heart of gold. It doesn't matter that he has no experience. So badly. He put on a total front of being the perfect boyfriend, managed to keep it up for over a year, but in reality was completely incapable of expressing his own emotions or needs, and secretly got insanely overwhelmed from expecting me to read his mind. Turns out he was actively planning our breakup for half a year behind my back, while he was talking marriage to me and having us move in together. What a mess. Oh, and after we broke up, all my friends told me they never liked him because he was very arrogant to them. We got married. I guess because he hadn't had a lot of experience in relationships, he didn't know how to navigate certain challenges, but then this can also be argued because everyone is different. So you need to be prepared to be able to stand back and be objective, have really good communication, patience, and try not to take certain things too personally. Be careful with your expectations. He will need you to be direct with him, but be responsible and fair with that. Wow, this sounds like great advice for any relationship. Editing to add. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, I've just seen so many relationships that could have used good communication skills. My most recent relationship ended because of poor communication and expectations. I don't think she had ever been in a serious relationship prior to this one, and her go-to method of arguing was the silent treatment. I tried so many times to tell her that we have to communicate to resolve issues. Same pattern again and again. Small argument, goes to getting mad instead of talking about the root issues, goes to shutting down communication for a week. I tried, but you can only take the silent treatment so many times. I'm concerned about a large amount of youth who do not have any practice navigating social situations or relationships in general, not to mention how common it is to hear advice to just break up if there are the slightest hiccups. Figured out even before we got together that he's been single because he's awkward, unsure of himself, and has never really put himself out there. But he's honestly one of the sweetest guys I've ever met. He's a good listener and is pretty in tune with his own feelings. I just feel really comfortable and happy in the 6 months we've been together. Of course, there's still some obstacles. He's still kinda awkward at times about being a boyfriend, and while he's aware of his and others' feelings, I still kinda have to pry sometimes for him to open up to certain things. Not a woman, but I did marry the guy with nearly zero relationship experience. Someone said to me, awkward is the most honest and authentic. Nobody's going to choose to be as painfully awkward as my husband, unless they're really trying this for real. No pretense, and it's all new. That was such a refreshing take on it. I have been deliberately cherishing my husband's awkwardness ever since. What does it mean to be awkward about being a boyfriend? He gets really stiff when I show affection sometimes. Like he doesn't oppose it, he just doesn't know how to react. Like he's better now with holding hands, but he still kinda gets stiff when I wrap my arm around his waist and when he tries to put his on my shoulder. I could tell he's not entirely sure where he should put it. Lol. And he has confided in me how he's not sure sometimes how chivalrous he should be. Like if he should rush to open a door for me or not let me walk at the side of the road or bring flowers to our dates. And says he feels bad that it doesn't come naturally to him to do those things. Of course I assure him I'm not particular about those things, but like I said in my original comment, it is something he's insecure about. But I can see he's working on it, and I like him the way he is anyway. Did he have physically abusive parents? If he had someone who would constantly hit him then later try to be sunshine and rainbows about everything, it would be confusing. Doesn't have to be physical abuse. Mental and emotional abuse can do this to a person. Growing up with a parent with an untreated mental or emotional disorder could do it too. Same confusion for the child, but technically not abuse from the parent. I'm reading these comments like, wait, women actually give you a chance if you've been single your whole life? Well, maximum one woman does. Over someone who has left a trail of broken lives? Absolutely. I'm closing in on 30 and everyone gets the ick when I tell them on date number X I've never had a girlfriend before, so these comments are baffling to me. Being in a good relationship is kind of like being a member of a music band or being a racing driver. There are a million different things that can't be practiced solely in theory. So it really comes down to the question, was the single guy building those interpersonal skills, self-knowledge, and etc. all along? Or were they instead possibly even losing ground as they isolated themselves farther and farther from reality? The most important part of that question, does that guy have a growth mindset or not? The anime Bocce the Rock is a fantastic exploration of those same ideas of isolation and a growth mindset, in the context of a girl dreaming of performing in a rock band. I did this twice. First time, it went very badly. Second time, it went great. We are married and he is the greatest. I'm curious, can you explain why for both? With the first one, I think he hadn't been in a relationship before because he did not like himself or have any self-esteem. We were set up through friends and really liked each other. He had awful communication issues, and in retrospect, I think he did not like me as a long-term partner and looked down on me as he looked down on himself. He viewed every disagreement as a battle to be won. He viewed my feelings as irrational and his own feelings as logical and factual, and had wild double standards for us both. With my husband, he had not been in a relationship because of anxiety and shyness, but he had done a lot of work on himself and was confident, kind, mature, and knew what he wanted. He is an excellent communicator and partner, and he is deeply committed to me, himself, and our relationship together. He views disagreements as something that we should solve together, and is loving and kind every day. So ultimately, I think that previous inexperience can be a red flag, but it can also just be a fact of someone's history that does not indicate how their future will unfold. Horribly. He thought I was his whipping post for every slight he's ever experienced because he's just a nice guy and didn't deserve people not giving him a chance. He completely took me for granted and constantly talked like he was still being forced to be single. This was back before incels were a thing, but he was one of the originals. And then when you give them a chance, they're still mad. I've experienced the same, but the guys weren't even the perpetually single ones, I was. They just hated that I wasn't fulfilling their self-made prophecy and taking away their woe is me identity. Not me, but my sister. Everyone thought, and mostly still think, he's a lovely guy. I think that's genuinely because people feel so sorry for him that they can't comprehend him being a nasty, entitled little cretin. He chased her for years, and when she had a bad breakup, the stars aligned and she gave him a chance. I don't think, looking back, he actually was chasing her. He never made much of an effort at all, and as soon as he had her, it's like he lost interest. Everyone would always comment on how it was so sweet that he waited, and my sister honestly felt like she kinda owed it to him. Almost immediately, she discovered that he was subscribing to a lot of OnlyFans creators, having casual conversations with them every day. He begged her for another chance. She caught him again a few months later. And then he started getting nasty, controlling. Hit her more than once, including in public, escalating to eventually choking her. He gaslit her daily. He kicked in doors, took her phone off of her when he got upset, and got the pair of them into more and more debt because he mismanaged finances terribly. His full list of character flaws is too long to really list and do justice, but among them was his complete lack of personal hygiene. He was absolutely disgusting. Went over 2 months without showering at a time, washed his clothes occasionally but let them go damp, and the whole house constantly smelled of this weird musk. She felt completely betrayed because they'd been friends for years and she thought he was going to be something different after a string of abusive partners. She desperately just wanted him to be the person that she thought he was. I told her to come stay with me for a while and tell him that he needed to make changes or she was going for good, get some distance from him. This was before I actually knew about any of the abusive behavior. She started telling me about exactly how bad he'd been treating her, and I told her she should just not go back. She said she tried to break up with him before, and he threatened to kill himself. Sweetheart, that's abuse as well. And he did exactly what she said he would, right on cue. Nearly 9 months later, and she's still with me. It's taken up most of my focus every single day, trying to make her feel safe and ensuring that she stays away from someone who I think genuinely may have ended up killing her. I'm not saying that to make it about me, but rather to emphasize just how much support people who've suffered abuse can need. It's not as simple as saying you're there if you're needed, and sometimes you have to be persistent, because the abused can very often feel like they're a burden and won't ask for help. I've had my eyes open to just how poorly a lot of men are willing to treat women, and I've had it finally click for me that abuse doesn't always necessarily mean physical violence. Like, yes, logically, I know that emotional abuse is damaging, but seeing it happening up close made me understand it so much more. All kinds of abuse are bad, but in its own way, someone who is unintentionally, but knowingly abusive can be a different kind of slow burn, insidious because it's less obvious. A lot of people without experience will struggle to understand why people go back to their abusers, even verging sometimes on outright doubt if victims go back, or blaming victims for their part in things. I just want to encourage everyone to consider how much prolonged mental and physical abuse can mess with someone's head. They aren't going to act rationally. If you've got a relative or a friend who you suspect might be struggling, please reach out. Chances are that they won't come to you first. I would also add that, yes, a lot of men are victims of abuse. I have been. But I truly believe there's such a prevalence of abusive behavior from men toward their partners that it's verging on a crisis. Even a lot of the supposed good ones fall into patterns of abusive behavior, in part because they don't have the perspective or self-awareness to understand how bad their actions are, or recognize toxic behavior in their friends or family and give it a pass. Wait, did he actually kill himself? Nah, just threatened it. We were over there to collect some of her things just before Christmas, and he implied to her that he was gonna go kill himself. He said we'd go one way, he'd go the other, it'd be okay. I said, either you're being genuine, in which case you know we cannot in good conscience leave you to it, or you're being manipulative, in which case you really need to consider what you're doing to my sister, because it's not fair. She insisted we stay with him for the night to make sure he was okay. I said, just in case he was being serious, I'd talk to him. I had to listen to him spout nonsense about how he knew I thought he wasn't good enough for her, how he'd never laid a finger on her in anger, which I knew was false, and all about how he was such a victim in all of this, all while he was downing a bottle of rum. Later on, when he was in bed, I went in to get a blanket and noticed he was on his back spasming. Idiot had gotten so drunk so fast, he was throwing up and choking, trying to sit up, and I guess not realizing he could just roll over onto his side. I took a long moment and just looked at him. I knew that, if I did nothing, he'd probably die. I thought the world would genuinely be a better place without him, but I couldn't bring myself to let him drown in his own filth, literally, and propped him up. This happened twice. Ungrateful bastard never even thanked me. And because he got sick everywhere, there was only one blanket, so the three of us had to share a bed. I was in the middle. Had to feel his clammy, disgusting skin pressing up against my back in the night while he tried to spoon me in his sleep. I just wanted to make sure I was a barrier between the two of them. I genuinely find myself wishing I'd walked out of the room most days and left him to it. You did the most sensible thing. There is no blood on your hands, and you did not lower yourself to his level. We just had our 2nd anniversary. We've decided to stay married for another 50 years minimum, and the only serious debate, not argument, definitely not fight, debate, we've ever had was over which one of us is luckier to have the other. I tell him often how sorry I am that he was lonely for so long, but I feel really blessed that he was still available when we met, closer to middle age than youth. I really do think that everyone who hopes to someday find their person is hoping and praying for a person exactly like who I got, and it's just one of life's little jokes that I got him, because I genuinely was not looking. I'm just smart enough to know a good thing when I see it. I married him, and it's been amazing. He's handsome, smart, educated, kind, respectful, funny, and I'm so lucky. He has no relationship baggage and never plays games. He says what he means, end of story. He is so psychologically healthy that he really should be studied. I've never met someone with such bulletproof self-esteem that isn't also a complete psycho. Some of these perpetually single men are just overgrown children and/or have crippling insecurities that keep them from dating. My husband is demisexual, and I suspect he's on the autism spectrum as well. so he has never been interested in hookups or casual dating, and also was kind of clueless when women expressed interest. He's told me stories about past interactions, and I've had to inform him that women have been hitting on him for years. He was shocked because he thought all these women were just being nice. I've known single men very mature. It's a common stereotype. These overgrown children types would be the same married or single. If they are this way in their 30s, just think 10 years ago. In fact, immaturity is what often causes the crappy relationships. It finished quickly, not for the lack of experience nor of feeling, but because of the traumas and insecurities he had which I could not resolve and which were too heavy to be in a relationship. He could not love himself, and I didn't think that this kind of problem would be so heavy on a relationship to the point it was hurting me. He refused the help and to get help. I hope he's okay. He was the sweetest soul I met. What kind of problems did his insecurities bring you? I've seen lots of comments saying the relationship was ruined by his traumas and insecurities, but never specify how. He was so insecure that he would have panic attacks and then would leave and give me a silent treatment for days without any information. He would overthink everything and reinterpret as a criticism of him anything, like really anything, that I would say or do or show. I was walking on shells constantly. He had given up on happiness and on several things in life and wanted me to be okay with it. These things would impact me as well. He was, I think, depressed, and he didn't think he deserved happiness. So sad, to be honest. I can comment on some of the things my partner was insecure about me doing. Going out dancing. I love to dance. I take 3 to 4 dance classes a week. I have a 16 square foot mirror in my home studio. Despite this, my ex told me the only reason people go out dancing is to hook up. I asked if he'd come dancing with me. Still no, it still caused too much jealousy and insecurity for him if I went, so I had to stop going, leaving town for work. He knew my job was regional. I called every night when I was on the road and brought him a gift every time I had an overnight out of town to show I was thinking of him. By the end of our relationship, I had to text him to warn him that when I got home, I'd be asking for us to schedule a time to discuss my going out of town. If I just told him dates I'd be gone, that was too abrupt, and gave him no choice in the matter, so I had to ask him and include him in the planning. Fine, that's normal, even if I didn't have a lot of choice in scheduling. Then those discussions caused him anxiety, so I needed to give him a heads up that the conversation was coming. Okay, I can do that to support and accommodate my partner. Then those texts caused too much pain, so we ended up with me asking permission to ask permission to leave town for work. Having guy friends, he said he wasn't comfortable with me spending time with a man he didn't know. Then he specifically went out of his way to sabotage all plans for him to meet my male friends, show up 1.5 hours late, forget to call and not pick up when I called, etc. But then he'd claim his boundary that I could only see male friends he knew was reasonable, so I couldn't see the friends he refused to meet. It felt like whenever I'd agree to a compromise or an accommodation for his insecurities, the goalposts would move. He felt like the logical endpoint was whenever he did not feel insecure. So if he still felt insecure while I was bending over backwards and shrinking myself to be with him, clearly I was not doing enough. He couldn't see how the issue of his insecurity was internal, and he was the only one who could make that feeling go away. He needed to do a lot of work on himself. Instead, he thought that the problem must exclusively be with me and my behavior, so he tried to control that. How about a response from a guy who had been single his entire life and then someone gave him a chance? We've been married for about 5 years now and have a 4-year-old. My first relationship was when I turned 37. I swear I didn't work at an electronics store and she was not running an eBay store. I was single during high school, college, and then early professional life. Anxiety, self-doubt, and lack of confidence led to a completely antisocial life. No real friends, no life. All fingers point to me. I am not blaming anyone. When I was 36 or so, I decided to make a change. I quit my job, sold or gave away everything, and moved to New York. This sounds like a sitcom, but in my mind, I had to be in a place with so many activities that I can't avoid them. I joined an MBA program and started taking part in activities. Met a girl at a lecture about ancient Roman history. Universities host guest lecturers all the time, which are open to everyone. That led to my first relationship. It was okay. Never really connected too well with her. She was too social for me. Well, 2 or 3 relationships later, I met my now wife at a work event. We didn't work together, we worked in the same line of work. Someone I knew at the event told me that woman over there was asking about you. I kept waiting for a chance to introduce myself to her. Eventually, she got up and sat down next to me and introduced herself. We started talking, then meeting up outside of work events, and 6 months later we were married. It's been going good so far. I took a chance on a guy who'd never had a serious relationship. Turns out that, at 25, he'd had sex only once before. Not just with only one person, but once. He was inexperienced both sexually and at relationships, and it showed. He wasn't great at, well, anything really. He wasn't great at conversations, nor showing interest in my life, nor being considerate, nor of cleanliness of his home. I think he was so happy to finally have a girlfriend that it didn't really matter who I was, you know? I gave him a 3-month chance and saw no improvement, so I broke it off. Well, it'll be 8 years together this September, so I'd say pretty good. We met on World of Warcraft, sorta trauma bonded in Mythic Raiding, which is basically 20 people working together to kill the hardest bosses in the game. He took forever to get to know. He spent about a year as an acquaintance, another year as a friend, and I woke up one morning reaching for my phone to see if he'd messaged me and realized, oh crap, I've caught feelings. I flew out to see him and finally learned his in-real-life name about 6 months after we confessed our feelings. We both were 28 at the time. I moved in with him about a year and a half later. He's a good-looking guy and very sweet, just shy and oblivious. He had previously been on a handful of dates, but never got a second, and hadn't slept with anyone. He still never notices when he's being ogled or flirted with. It's become the best relationship I've ever had by far. He's one of maybe 2 or 3 people I can truly be myself with. Love how the results here are either marriage or them turning out to be complete weirdos. No in-betweens. Basically, was the person single because they were too shy, or were they single because they were an asshole?